and it's fun, and I hope we can all look at it in the same way. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to think about strategies of onboarding users to Automation Cloud. And then we're going to look at how we can actually implement those strategies by using features that come out of the box in Automation Cloud. In two separate sections, one which is focused about getting your users onboarded to Automation Cloud, and then securing access to your organization on Automation Cloud. Then we're going to end with the Q&A section and an open conversation where maybe we can find out more about different use cases which were not covered in the short presentation. So first, because I started to talk about onboarding strategies, let's think a little about that and see why we would need to think about the strategy before actually starting to do any configuration or any setup for anything. The thing is that with small organizations that have a limited number of users, things can be handled on the go, can be handled manually. It's not such a big burden, but with larger organizations, that's when things get complicated. You have users from, you have a lot of users that are in different regions. Some of the users might need to access certain products with different permissions. Other users need a different setup. So that's something that makes things complicated. And thinking about how to organize things before you start doing it will make things a lot better. Let's think a little about what happens if we would not think about the onboarding strategy before we start that. Doing everything manually, like handling permissions, handling licenses, trying to group users in any way after all the users are able to sign into Automation Cloud. That would make things any action of the admin would add up, and then you at the end of the day you would have like 1 million tasks. And the bad news is that at the end of the day, the organization admin would be seen as a bottleneck, and also with a lot of wasted energy. And then let's think about how you can prepare for an onboarding strategy. What are the aspects you should think about when defining the onboarding strategy. I think the most important thing here is to look at two aspects. One is, okay, who are my users? How are they structured in the context of Automation Cloud? That means what are those attributes that identify certain cohorts of users, certain subsets of users, based on what they need to do in Automation Cloud. And when you have that virtual grouping, that's how the strategy starts to be defined. And then one other aspect that we should think about when defining such a strategy: what kind of restrictions do we need to impose on those that will use Automation Cloud? And during the conversation, we're going to get to the notion of restrictions. and see what that means, what it's achievable today, and see how that works, for the use cases that you're thinking about. Now, because we talked about strategies, let's give a few examples. I have a few examples here, which some might be simple, but I define them in such a way to expose certain aspects of defining a strategy. So let's go through that. We have, the first thing, the first example is quite simple. You have an organization, everyone in your user directory can have access, and an admin will set up elevated permissions for those users that need that. So all that needs to be done is just set up the organization in such a way that users can sign in, and that's all. No other things to think about. This, of course, as I said before, works for smaller companies. So this is the simplest example. Then you have another strategy where you think about, like I said, you think about who are those users that should access certain products, and think about what defines them. Think about a grouping strategy for them, and then think about what permissions should be assigned to each group, what licenses should be assigned to each group. Of course, the system should allow this to happen in a dynamic way. So you define it once, and then it works for all the users that sign in. Then another type of strategy you can think about. No matter how you organize the users, there might be a concern about where how we can define a trusted context for accessing the organization on Automation Cloud. And I'm thinking here specifically about examples such as we have we have offices around the world. We have people working from different teams, but we want to allow them to sign in only from the offices. Or we have certain offices that should be allowed to sign in, and other offices should not have access. Or we want to enable certain users to work remotely, but we need to do that for each. And for that, the system should allow admins to define what are the locations that are allowed to access Automation Cloud for that specific organization. And this is, we're going to get into how this is achievable in Automation Cloud, and you'll see. Then we have the last example. That's a more restrictive one. Think about an organization that has, many users, but by default, nobody has access to the organization, and that allows an admin to actually define explicitly who should be allowed access into the organization account on Automation Cloud. This is this might seem like an excessive restriction, but it's actually very useful when you have an integration with the directory and you have a lot of users there, but you want the best control on who from that user base can actually access the organization. And again, we're going to get into details how that can be achieved. Moving further, we're going to look at first we're going to look at how you get the users into the the Automation Cloud account, and then look at securing the account aspects. So the first type of integration for achieving single sign-on and doing a directory integration, the first one we're going to talk about is the integration with the Azure Active Directory. And if the organization already has Azure AD or Office 365, because Azure AD comes with Office 365, then you can connect the automation cloud organization directly to the tenant, to the Azure AD tenant. There are some things, some benefits to this, except for the benefit on single sign-on. It's clear. The fact that any kind of user credentials are not shared, the sign-in happens through SSO. And of course, when the user comes to the Automation Cloud and tries to access the organization, if he is already signed in, that sign-in is recognized, and he will automatically get signed into Automation Cloud too. But I think one of the most important aspects of this integration is related to the fact that all the users and the groups in the directory become available, become addressable in Automation Cloud. And that helps with giving admins the right details to actually prepare, implement the strategy in terms of permissions and licensing before the users actually sign in. So for example, you can, once the integration with Azure AD is done, you can go and assign a set of permissions for an AD group, for a group of users from the Azure AD tenant. That means that when users who belong to that group will sign in, they will already inherit those permissions that their group has. And that makes things a lot easier when planning for a large organization. Okay. Moving further, the next option for direct integration is to connect to an IDP through SAML. The main difference, it still enables single sign-on. That's clear, but the main difference between an Azure AD integration and SAML is that users and groups are not discoverable in Automation Cloud before they actually sign in, before they actually are provisioned in the system. The good news here is that we have implemented something called provisioning rules that allow you to mimic somehow the same behavior that we have for AD. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So what we have done here, it's we've built a way for organization admins to define a set of rules which are based on claims, so values that we receive through the SAML integration, and certain values. Like, for example, let's say we get a department and we said the department is the claim value is, I don't know, for example, sales, and the relationship between the two. Relationship, it's a verb, such as is or is not. So it's equal, it's not equal, it contains, it doesn't contain, things like that. And you can create a combination of such rules, and at the end, specify a group or multiple groups where a user that matches all those rules will be assigned. And this works something like this. You think about the groups that you would need, something like developers, something like, let's say, users that will access apps or users that will manage apps. Define those groups, those local groups in Automation Cloud. Assign permissions, licenses, everything that you need for those groups. And then look at the users that you have in your own directory and see what are those attributes that would identify them. So for example, if they have an attribute department, an attribute location, an attribute, a custom attribute that they use and they expose to us through to the SAML integration, then that can be used to assign the user, of course, when the user signs in, to a group that already has certain permissions and access to certain products. When the user will sign in, of course, he will inherit those permissions because he is part of the group. Now we're going to the next step, which is securing the access to your Automation Cloud account. And here we have a set of policies that can be set, can be changed, can be modified, and we're gonna go through each to see what can be achieved here. One of the things, one of the areas where we focus, it's about sessions. So today we're looking at two ways of controlling this. One, it's about how long I'm gonna let a session which becomes inactive to still be active. It's the user becomes inactive, but the session still remains active. And this can be set for each organization. You can have like a company policy that says, okay, I'm going to allow just 1 hour or 10 minutes. If the user is inactive for 10 minutes, just terminate the session. More permissive organizations can say, okay, let's say 48 hours, and then we consider we need to terminate the session. Then another policy about sessions, it's about concurrent sessions. Concurrent sessions meaning that we're not allowing the same user to be signed in on multiple machines, and this helps from a security point of view. In case you suspect you have a session open somewhere, you can sign in on your device, and then that session would be terminated immediately. So this is those are the policies related to sessions. Then, if you remember at the beginning, I was talking about controlling the location. Here is a feature that's new. It's called IP range restrictions. And what we've done here, it's allowing organization admins to define a set of IP ranges that are actually mapped to specific locations. The mapping, it's of course it's outside Automation Cloud. I mean, we allow an organ admin to define a name for a range of IPs, but the actual mapping to offices or certain areas in an office or certain employees that work at home, that's something which we don't know. But what we do here, it's allowing org-admins to define all those sets of IPs that should be considered trusted locations. And then after that happens, the policy can be enabled, and only accessing from those IPs will actually be allowed starting with that moment. This is really useful when you want a stricter control to where your users should come from. And then the last type of policy that we're going to talk, it's about organization level access policy. When you think about users in the directory and who should access, initially you have two decisions. You can either say, okay, I'm going to allow everyone, and then set up everything with roles and permissions and licensing allocation, or you could have a very restrictive strategy that says, okay, no, I'm going to restrict everyone, and I'm going to mention I want to give access only to some very specific people or groups. For this second use case, we created this policy, and this policy allows you to define local or directory groups or local or directory users. And then when the policy is enabled, only the users which are specified there or are part of the groups that are specified will be allowed to actually access any kind of resources of the in Automation Cloud for that specific organization. Okay. Now let's think about the key benefits of what we talked here. We have SSO, of course, that makes things a lot simpler and secure for users that sign in. We've covered dynamic ways to actually allocate permissions and licenses to users. That means proactive provisioning, and also we've covered some key policies that allow you to actually secure access to your organization. And before we go to an open conversation and Q&A, in the presentation here, you're going to find some links where you can find a lot more details about integrating with Azure AD, with SAML, and all the authentication methods that are available. And also don't forget about the next session next week. That's going to be on the 16th. You can register there too.
Thank you, Daniel. So as Daniel just mentioned, we will be having the next session on mastering the automation cloud admin experience, as you can see on the screen. I have just mentioned in the last 2 messages ago the link to this entire series. So you will find the link to this session as well over there. I will also paste the link directly to that session in the chat. So here it is. You can also directly register for this session. So I think we can open up for Q&A. Anyone feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you might want to get answers for. You can also post on chat in case you're shy.
Hi, Daniel.
One question, sorry, multiple people at the same time. Go ahead, Nikesh.
Okay, so Daniel, if you could just go to one slide up where we are talking about the IP restrictions. So is it applicable only to the cloud user, or is it applicable to the enterprise users as well?
So it's applicable to all the users that sign in to Automation Cloud. no matter how the setup is done. I mean, no matter if they are a local user or if they sign in through SSO, they are a directory user. This is a restriction which is at the organization level, so it reflects for all types of users.
Okay, I have one more question there. So for example, if an organization is there which has set up not the SSO but the user ID and the password, right? So I was working with a client where the password used to expire every 15 days, 20 days, or 30 days, right? Who defines that 25, 30 or that number, right? Is it defined in the orchestrator cloud by us as an admin, or is it defined at the somewhere else? That the user need to change the password every some X number of days.
It should be a policy that it's definable per organization. Haven't touched that area for a while, but definitely we can follow up on this, on how to actually set that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Can we go to the next slide on the Active Directory integration component? I think it was the next slide. Yeah, so this one says you can restrict user coming from directory groups. If Active Directory integration is there and the user is not in one of the Active Directory groups, when they log into Automation Cloud, I think they are given everyone a role. Is there any way to prevent that?
Yeah, it's so this access policy, it's something like this. So first you define and say, okay, we have 10 groups in the directory. This also works with SAML, but in a different way. You use the local groups and map with the claims mapping. You map users that come through SAML to those local groups. And you, from the 10 groups that you have in AD, for example, you say only this group and these two users will be allowed to access the organization. When someone will sign in and it's not in this list and the policy is enabled, he will not get to access any kind of resource of the organization. So just after signing, he will see a screen that that says, "Okay, sorry, you don't have access to this organization. Please contact your admin." So we'll not get to have any kind of permission. You'll not get into the situation where you have the user assigned to the everyone group, and there are some I don't know, products that might be configured to allow someone in the everyone group to do something.
Okay, I gotta play around and see how it works.
Yeah, it's not yet available. This is one of the features which will be available pretty soon. In the next release, that's going to happen pretty soon. But as soon as it becomes available, we will announce it, and then you can play with it, of course.
Okay, that's good to know. I thought this was available today. All right, that's good.
No. Yeah, thank you too. Also, IP restrictions, it's a feature that just got released, like, I think 2 weeks ago.
Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and we can go ahead. Deepak, do you want to close the session then in that case?
Sure, Rohit. I mean, if we have no further question, I think we give back 25 minutes of everybody's time. So
Awesome. Perfect. So in case you come across any questions post the session, please do connect with Daniel. I have already shared his LinkedIn profile over there, so you can bother him there and get your questions answered. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being here. Looking forward to see you all in the next session. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and just ping me on LinkedIn anytime.
Perfect. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.